Now, as some of you might already know, many Navajo people are reluctant to talk about skinwalkers. They believe if you talk about them, you will draw their attention. Well, Rick, however, did not grow up on the Navajo reservation. He grew up away from it, and so was very naive on the subject. And when it came to skinwalkers, he was a skeptic. His mom used to tell the story of how back in the 80s, when she lived with her siblings and his grandparents, how she and her sister saw one on the driveway under a streetlight. And she describes it as a big black dog with dirty fur and a twisted noodle-like front leg and these unnatural eyes with a soft burnt orange glow. And Rick, being his close-minded self, doubted every word, although he never told his mother that. But those doubts changed last year when he went to visit his grandparents in October. He and his family had just finished scourging the carnival at the Navajo Nation Fair and were calling it a night. Now, their house was close enough that they could walk home in like 10 minutes. So they did. And it was probably about 9 o'clock when they got home. And they all stayed up until like 2 a.m., just catching up on family matters and local news. And it was during that time that Rick decided to open his mouth and blurt out the question, "Hey, are skinwalkers real?" "Guys, you shouldn't be asking about that," his grandmother said with a scold in her voice. And at that point, both she and his grandfather decided it was time for bed. And after being quietly scolded by his mom, one of his aunts chimes in with a very cautious tone and says, "Yes, they are real, all right. We had a few screaming outside of our trailer a few nights ago. Your cousin had nightmares all night and woke up crying in the morning." Not wanting to push the point any further, they all decided to just go to bed. Now, the trailer that was their home was pretty old, didn't have air conditioning, so they were all sleeping with the windows open and just with the screens so the breeze could come through. And everyone had drifted off to sleep except Rick. His mind was going a million miles a minute thinking about skinwalkers, and he started to wonder, I wonder, now that I'm on the reservation, if maybe I might see one. And that is when the hit the fan. Just as Rick was settling down, relaxing, and almost ready to fall asleep, he started to hear something moving outside. So he got up off the couch and wandered over to the kitchen window. And all the lights were off inside the trailer. The only light around was from the porch light out in front. And Rick was actually thinking he was kind of glad that that was the case, because if there was a skinwalker out there, maybe it wouldn't notice him looking at it. So he finally musters up the courage to take a look out the window. And all he sees are the cars in the driveway and the trash cans on the side of the road. And after about a good 5 seconds of scanning the area, he doesn't see anything. He turns around and he starts going back to bed, thinking it was probably just a stray cat or something. And he only gets about 2 steps when he hears this distorted screaming from outside, coming from someplace definitely close. And Rick pushes past the fear that's rising in his stomach and looks out the window again, and he sees it. A coyote-like figure is staring in his direction from behind the cars, just out of reach of the porch light. Only it looked really wrong and gave off a really evil vibe just looking at it. It was gray with very disheveled hair and an evil dark orange glow coming from its eyes. So Rick says, "I don't think so," and runs back to the bedroom. And at this point, he notices an awful stench of rotting meat filling the trailer. So Rick starts trying to wake up his mom. And his mom's like, "Ugh, it is 3 a.m. What do you want?" And Rick tells her in a shaky voice, there's something scary outside." And his mom says, still trying to go back to sleep, "It's the res. There are animals wandering all the time. It's just a stray cat or something." And Rick is thinking, she is obviously not getting the drift of what it is I am trying to say. So he screams, "There is some Blair Witch Project going on outside, Ma." That got her attention. And his mom says, "What? What the hell are you talking about?" And just then, they both heard it. The unnatural screaming coming from outside, as well as what sounded like something thrashing around on the ground. Rick says, "Hear that? That's what I'm talking about." So both Rick and his mom got up and made their way back to that kitchen window. And they looked outside, and sure enough, that coyote thing was making its way toward the front door. And it walked with an odd limp, and it dragged one of its back legs like it was handicapped. And they could hear it start to scratch on the front door as it's making this odd, muffled, moaning sound. So Rick's mom went and got Rick's dad, and they both start yelling at this thing in Navajo, telling it to go away, that it's not welcome here. Well, all this commotion is enough to wake up everyone, and they all start coming out into the hallway. And his mom looks at everyone and says, "Skinwalker," as she's pointing to the window. But apparently, they already knew what to do, as his grandfather comes out, grabs his handgun, gets a bag of ashes out of the kitchen drawer, coats the bullets in ashes, and loads them back into the gun. Then he marches straight to the front door, whips it open, yelling something in Navajo so fast that Rick couldn't quite understand, and fires 2 shots into the dark. But nothing. The thing managed to escape before Rick's grandpa could shoot it. And the only thing his grandpa said was, "That's the fastest one I've ever seen." And the next thing you know, Rick's aunts and his parents are all freaking out and saying things like, "What if it comes back tomorrow? And it saw us. Does that mean that we're all targets now?" But his grandparents calmed everybody down and got everybody back to bed. The next morning, Rick's grandparents called one of the neighbors and explained to them everything that had happened. Apparently, one of their neighbors was a medicine man who used to partake in ceremonies of healing and curing sickness. And he came over and gave each member of the family a blessing and blessed the grounds outside the house. And Rick is no longer a skeptic.